Brian, this weather right now is typical of what we've had in the last 10 days. Does that mean the races are off or on?
Races are definitely on at this stage, Lee. We're hoping for a break in the weather, and we hope your weatherman can help us there.
Sure. The track, though, surprisingly, and we've had some inches, it's not too bad.
This is a great wet weather track. We've had something like in excess of 200 millimetres in the last week, and as you can see that it has held up really well.
The big race tomorrow?
We've got two main races tomorrow, the Steel City Stakes and the Bernard Hemmerman Cup, and if this weather just clears a little, we're right, we're away.
Wednesday's, I suppose, your big day.
The Carlton Newmarket's our feature sprint at this time of the year. $50,000 is a big prize, and of course we've got Menuhin trying to win 3 consecutive Carlton Newmarkets.
Track heavy, it says on the sign.
Well, it is at this stage. These showers won't affect the track much more. It's only torrential rain that'll really put us out of business tomorrow.
The poster competition has been sponsored by the Hunter Medical Association in conjunction with the regional branch of the Department of Health. Primary school students were asked to submit posters illustrating the theme, drugs should be used correctly, while secondary school students were given the topic, how to resist peer pressure of drug abuse. The graphic results are on display at Garden City Shopping Centre until Thursday, when the judging will take place.
The turn in the Steel Steady Stakes, and first to swing Palazam, second Blazing Cotton, down the outside most impressive, starting to run home nicely together with King Randella, and then came Connie de Debut. Blazing Cotton tackled by most impressive, Palazam battling on it, and on the outside King Randell, but most impressive takes over. It's about a neck in front of King Randell, third Blazing Cotton and Connie Debut. 100 left to run, most impressive the leader, it's grabbed a link. King Randell on the outside is trying to pick it up, but most impressive too good. Most impressive a half length to King Randell.
And there's the winner, most impressive, with Wayne Harris on board. Considering the weather and the building work in progress, the crowd was described as satisfactory, and the money went on just the same. Runners for the regional stakes, the first leg of the double, paraded, and Harris once more looked a chance on the favourite Pitgans. It was all eyes right as they headed for home.
Well, they've got 300 to go, and Pitgans moving up to join Grey Ace, third Rumours. Now down the outside, Miss Barden, followed by Quite Notorious and Aussie Royal. It's the two Greys, Pitgans and Grey Ace, with Grey Ace picking again. Aussie Royal coming home well, and on the outside Rumours, but Grey Ace got clear with 100 to go. Oh, it's home, Grey Ace. It's 2 in front of Aussie Royal and Pitgans and Miss Barden, but Grey Ace wins it nicely over Aussie Royal. Oh, 3 in it there for third.
Grey Ace
there was
and Jim Cassidy returned to scale. Now race 9.
Towards the turn in the Bernard Hemmerman Cup, and Super Tradition moving up to join Irish Flyer. Dollar down the outside, over on the inside was Haddington, and further back the Double Beauty. They've got 200 to go, and Super Tradition the leader. Dollars into second places after the leader. Third Irish Flyer, they were followed by Haddington, and further back to Brigalow, but Dollar sprinted away, 100 to go. He's full of running, Dollar. It raced away 2 lengths in front of Super Tradition. Irish Flyer, Brigalow running home, but Dollar too good, and Dollar scores by 2 lengths on the line to either Brigalow or Silver Edition, and then came back behind them by Court Region Irish Flyer, Double Beauty. A fair way back then to Noble Malay, Kerbal, and Haddington was last in.
Every Tuesday night, the Dark Club meets at the Newcastle Workers' Club, and their oldest and most club member, May Hickenbottom, never misses an evening. In fact, there's rarely a day that goes by without May visiting the club.
Well, she'd be our favourite customer because she's here every day of the year, 364 days a year. We're shut on Christmas Day. But without exaggeration, every day she comes in for breakfast. As soon as we open, she's one of the last to leave every night of the year.
Today, May turns 92, and in honour of the occasion, management of the club last night presented her with a cake and gift to thank her for her patronage. May says she intends to continue playing darts and winning. She is currently leading in the ladies' point score.
Mate, how long have you been playing darts?
42 years.
And you still enjoy it?
Yes, love it.
Are you going to keep on playing?
Yes, while I can stand up to it.
Good morning everyone and welcome. About 15 months ago, a 16-year-old young lady decided to buy some shares, and after having the support of her parents and shopping around and talking to me, I'm pleased to say, she ended up with 100 shares in BHP. The cost per share, $8.50. So without forgetting brokerage of 2.5% for one moment, we're looking at a total outlay of $850. Since then, we've seen a 1-for-4 bonus issue from BHP. Bonus issues are gifts of shares. We've seen a share split. The $2 shares have been split into $1 shares, and most recently, a 1-for-4 bonus issue, as predicted on this program, to celebrate their centenary. We're now looking at a price per share for BHP in excess of $6, and this young lady's shareholding has increased from 100 to around 281. So in fact, in just on 15 months, she's almost doubled her money, and that's not a bad return by any standards. Now, the other thing to remember is this. BHP, along with other companies, and these are the things that I bring up from time to time, give you the choice of taking dividends in cash, or if you don't want your dividends in cash, you can elect to join their dividend reinvestment plan, whereby you buy extra shares in the company at a discount. It varies from company to company, but normally around 5%. And I'm sure this young lady has opted for the dividend reinvestment plan so that she'll be in a position to add to her holding every 6 months from the dividends that she would normally receive. I'm sure in the not too distant future she'll be buying shares in other companies like the Australian Gaslight Company, CSR, James Hardie, Boreal, just to name a few. And remembering that I bought my first shares when I was 17, I think this is a great way to start. You're never too young to start as far as investment is concerned. That's a message to our young viewers, and it's also a message to the parents and grandparents. I'll see you next Monday. Good morning everyone and welcome once again. These days, with so much going on, professional advice is paramount, but unfortunately we're not receiving the advice that we should be. And let me give you yet another illustration. A few weeks ago I met a young family, well not so young, say a middle-aged family, and they've been in business for around 15 to 20 years. I might add it's their own business. And allowing for the ups and downs of the, shall we say, the marketplace, they're doing reasonably well. And recently their son has joined in the partnership. Now, they have paid salaries and or wages, call them what you will, out of the profits of the company for around the last 14 or 15 years, and they employ a so-called professional advisor. And I stress in inverted commas, so-called, because at no stage has superannuation, and I kid you not, at no stage has superannuation been suggested to this particular family, and according to my calculations, and I'm being very, very conservative, they have probably given up tax-free benefits or tax-free income to the tune of around $100,000, if not more. And quite frankly, it's deplorable. I might add that they also had their own family company, which for some strange reason was wound up about 12 months ago. And they could have used this family company as the vehicle to provide them with superannuation fund benefits. I can give you dozens and dozens of similar illustrations. So if you happen to be involved in something similar and you do not have superannuation benefits, well then you'd be better off asking a few questions of your accountant. And if you don't do it now, then you'll miss out unless these things take place before the 30th of June. Quite frankly, I again repeat, I'm disgusted with the lack of professional advice, or perhaps no advice at all, and that's why I'm suggesting that you shop around at every opportunity. I'll see you next Monday. Good morning everyone and welcome once again. Last week, as you'll recall, I mentioned the family who had given up around $100,000 worth of superannuation benefits in one way, shape or form, simply because they did not receive professional advice. I mentioned this episode on a radio program the day after, and not to my surprise, I received a phone call from a gentleman who very fortunately received an income of some $300,000 a year. Or perhaps I should say the family received the income from investments of $300,000. And he wanted suggestions as to what way they could perhaps invest this money to, number one, make some capital gains in the future, and number two, to legally, and I stress legally, minimise the tax burden. Not unnaturally, I asked the question, had he been to his accountant? And the answer was yes. And I said, well, what advice did the accountant offer? He said, none whatsoever. Now, once again, I find this quite appalling. And I'm not expecting all the advisors and all the accountants to be professional in all forms of investment. But what I am expecting, what clients should also expect, is that if the advisor or the accountant doesn't know or doesn't have the skills, then he or she should say so and then point them in the right direction. I just very quickly made a few suggestions like managed investment bonds where the profits are entirely tax-free after a 10-year term. I didn't ignore investing in quality films where you have a 133% tax deduction and the first 33% of the income being tax-free, and I didn't ignore real estate. But that's the message of today. Please, for your own sake, make sure you are receiving professional advice, and I think a good way to begin, and I'm not talking about the share market, but a good way to begin is to make contact with either a local broker or a stockbroker in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, wherever it may be. That's the way to start that professional, shall we say, involvement. And if your accountant can't deliver the goods, well then my advice is change your accountant. I'll see you next Monday. Good morning everyone and welcome. I know that there are two schools of thought about early repayment of one's mortgage, and I'm not against either school depending upon one's situation. But let me put a few thoughts to you. Firstly, if you're lucky enough to have a 15 or a 20 or a 25-year mortgage at normal interest rates, and I'm talking around 11.5 or 12% in the case of banks, or perhaps 13 or 13.5 in the case of building societies, that's a pretty good deal. And I know you're paying a hefty, shall we say, interest payment each year, and collectively over that 10, 15, 20 or 25-year term, the interest bill might seem quite staggering. But on the other hand, even with moderate rates of inflation, inflation will in fact help pay off the mortgage for you. So the thought is, that's one way of approaching it, because if you are earning, by way of example, an income of $15,000 a year, and your mortgage repayments come to $5,000 a year, you're paying out 1/3 of your income in repayments. I mean, that's simple arithmetic. But looking down the track, say 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, you'll probably find, in fact I think you'll certainly find, that your income might be 30, 35, 40,000 a year, if not more. So now, without forgetting upward or downward adjustments in interest rates, we're looking at 5,000 per annum out of 35 or 40,000. So that's a much smaller proportion. By the same token, if you should receive unexpected money by way of legacy or gift from parents or grandparents, don't rush in and pay off your existing mortgage. Why not think about putting down some of this money by way of deposit on a home unit, a townhouse or a villa or a holiday home, or look at some other forms of investment. Now the final choice is of course yours. And if you're a worrier, well then my advice is pay off the mortgage. But if you're not a worrier and you use, as I said, that all-important common sense approach, you could put this money to good use elsewhere. I'll leave that thought with you, and I'll see you next Monday.
The Tangara was launched with much flag waving at Sydney's Central Station. Premier Rand, Transport Minister Barry Unsworth and the Chief Executive of the SRA, David Hill, were all smiles about the train, which they obviously hope will be a big vote winner. The prototype was built by Guninans and is very close to the final design by SRA engineers who travelled the world for ideas. Tangara is the Aboriginal word meaning to go, and passengers will go in greater comfort than before. It boasts vandal-resistant seats, jerk-free acceleration and braking, a destination indicator at the front of each carriage, better air conditioning and larger windows. There will also be television monitors in each carriage for security. The Tangara is faster than the present double-decker carriages, reaching speeds of 130 kilometres an hour. Although it will be mainly used on Sydney urban runs, the Tangara will also travel the electric lines to Newcastle. The first of 450 carriages should be delivered at the end of 1987 and will be built at a rate of 60 a year. Tenders for the contract will be called in the next few weeks, and Guninans, which is presently building 100 of the old design for the SRA, believes it's in the box seat.
With our track record in the last 6 or 7 years on these vehicles, our relationships with both the government and with the State Rail Authority, we're confident we'd certainly at the minimum share in any future contracts of this nature.
What would it mean for employment both at Guninans and in the area generally?
Well, currently we're employing over 200 people on the present contract. We'd see continuity for them, and depending on the production rate, an increase possibly in employment. And in the area around Newcastle, certainly millions of dollars worth of work to be subcontracted.
Only 3 months ago, Singleton Council and the business community were hoping the artillery school would come here, bringing people and money. After today's newspaper article, they fear that far from being expanded, the army base will be downgraded. If the artillery school is located in the Bathurst Orange area, Singleton's infantry school will probably move there too, because the army wants both training facilities in the same place. The general consensus is that the loss of the infantry school would be a serious blow to the town's economy.
You take $10 million out of our community here in Singleton a year. You immediately vacate 200 homes in town. We've also got the augmentation of our water supply, our sewage supply. The Army subsidises both these things in town. It will mean it'll be devastating to the business community.
Singleton has a lot riding on the army base. 3 major shopping centres have opened here within the last 12 months, partly in the expectation that the School of Artillery will locate here.
And the retailing industry, which has had some building activity recently with several national retailers arriving in town, would suffer seeing they have pinned a great deal of their expectations on a continuing growth. The loss of the army camp would be equivalent, in my opinion, to the loss of 3 or 4 coal mines.
Have the local federal politicians done enough to fight for the retention of the army base?
Well, in my opinion, no. This is an obvious lack. There are at least half a dozen Labor politicians in the Hunter, and it's about time that we saw some influence of these politicians to preserve our army base. After all,
Councillor Souris says the federal member for Hunter, Eric Fitzgibbon, agreed today to argue Singleton's case in Canberra. He says the council will push for compensation if the infantry school is moved. Although the Defence Department now appears to favour the Bathurst Orange site, Singleton is not giving up.
I don't believe that the fight's over yet. We're just about to get mobile and go into stage 2 to retain it here.
Young Robin Brown from Merriweather lined up at the start for what was described as the Melbourne Cup of grocery grabs at the Garden City Shopping Centre. She got off to a quick start for the grand final of the competition sponsored by Coca-Cola bottlers and Radio 2HD. Robin had 15 minutes to grab anything and everything, and in her own words, she was out to get as much as she could, as quick as she could. As the minutes ticked away, Robin's account soared until the final figure was reached, a grand total of $3,566.10.
Robin, you've just won over $3,500 worth of groceries. How do you feel?
Tired, exhausted, and I don't know, just thrilled. I can't believe it.
When do you think you'll need to go grocery shopping again?
Oh, probably the next 6 months. It'll take me 2 days to unpack the lot.
The appeal steamed into action today when the 3801 Restoration Committee visited the project at the State Dockyard. Most of the committee members are industry and business leaders in Sydney, and they have been saddled with the task of raising $500,000 in donations over the next 20 weeks. A quarter of that money will see the restoration of 3801 complete by the end of the year, but the rest is needed to keep the project running over the next 5 years. When complete, 3801 will be a rolling museum, owned by a company formed for the purpose. That company aims to continue restoring historic rolling stock throughout the state, using apprentices from the Hunter Valley Training Company and similar organisations. The HVTC indentures first-year and out-of-trade apprentices. They are painstakingly unbolting and restoring to working order every component of 3801, which was retired in 1970. When it entered service in 1943, 3801 was the fastest loco in the state. The Restoration Committee is confident that those acorn days can be recaptured.